Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the LinkedIn podcast, hosted by yours truly, of course, and then also co-hosted by my main man, the Lindy Legend. And we are making our comeback, or I would call it a comeback, but you can't really call a comeback if we never left, which we didn't. So to come back from something, I do not know how this feels. No disrespect to anyone, but I've been here and I'm back again. So back in the Sideline Sports Network airwaves, covering the Eagles. What's up, Lindy? How you doing tonight, bro?
Yeah, I would say it's great to have you back, man. I got bored. I got bored with some things outside of my own channel's content, so it's good to get back on the platform of the podcast that we started. And 14 episodes in, going into this evening, it still seems we have a long way to go. But
Super long
it's
way.
great to be back to do this again.
Absolutely. And we already have Grizz in the comment section.
Yep,
What's up,
there he
Grizz?
is.
My main man, friend of the show and friend outside of the show, by the way. I'm always talking to Grizz every single day, actually. Great dude. But we got to get in. I know we missed a lot of stuff over the past like 6-7 weeks. Too much stuff to actually make up for. So, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that. But we're going to have to start with our main man, Carson Wentz, former quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, taking on him and the Washington Commanders in week 3 of the season. The Eagles improved to 3-0. They sacked Wentz 9 times in this game, and it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable dominant performance by the defense. The offense needs to do better in the second half. I mean, I think we all know that. I'm not hitting the panic button on that like I see a lot of people doing. Oh, the offense can't get it done. They're not doing it in the second half. We have people out here, and I'm not going to name drop. We have people out here saying, oh, well, 1 week the offense shows up and the defense doesn't show up, and the defense shows up and the offense doesn't show up. Well, if the offense wasn't showing up, they wouldn't be ranked number 1 in the most yards in the NFL. And they're scoring a lot of points. They're scoring points earlier and getting ahead early, and defense is closing it out. So what we're seeing right now is it's a lot of complementary football, but for the Eagles to really get to that point where they're, hitting on all cylinders, that's when we're going to begin to see like how good this offense can really be. I think that later in the season, they will start to, find their identity, find their groove, and the plays that they like to do. One thing about this game is why I think we couldn't really like fully open it up offensively is because we couldn't really run the ball that much. Like we were not able to run the ball like we're used to seeing. Every game, you pretty much see the Eagles are running for well over 100 yards. Jalen Hurts was contained as far as running the ball, but he had a fantastic game through the air, 340 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. So it's been fantastic to see Jalen Hurts' growth, and we're gonna actually be talking about that as well later in the show. But I'm very pleased with the performance. I'm very pleased that the team's 3-0. They're doing what they got to do, playing some complimentary ball, and 3-0. And you couldn't ask for a much better start than that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the difference from week 2 to week 3, and while the Commanders aren't necessarily a step up in terms of defense, where the difference is the Vikings are 9th in points allowed versus Washington, who is 28th in points allowed. If you look at that aside, it's just the continued evolution and what we're seeing in Hurts as a passer.
He's balling.
He had a QBR on a scale of 0 to 100. He had an 86. His QBR was an 86 that game versus Carson Wentz, who was, well, his QBR was his jersey number, 11.
11.
That is the lowest QBR that the Eagles have held to a quarterback in their first 3 weeks, which, you can take it for what it is. It does. I mean, does it say a whole lot? I don't think so. I mean, when you look at the group of quarterbacks that they faced between Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, and Carson Wentz, I mean, who can you arguably say is the worst quarterback of the 3? And most Eagles fans are probably going to put Wentz in that category.
I'm going with Wentz. Yeah.
We have known him for how many years? spanning from the, being an Eagle and then getting traded to the Colts, and now Washington has that mess that they have to deal with. In the entire stretch of the game, I mean, there was a slew of issues that the Commanders had as a whole. A lot of it stems from the quarterback. A lot of it stems from the coaching staff not making the necessary adjustments. And, the quarterback, Carson, he just couldn't help himself. We seen the same old Carson coughing up the football. How many forced fumbles the Eagles had? They had 2 that game. They ended up recovering one of them. This is the same Carson Wentz who has trouble in getting rid of the football and living to fight for the next down, throwing the football away, being a little more cautious with his decision making. A lot of stuff that, again, we were used to, especially in 2020. But yeah, nonetheless, this was an absolute dominant performance by the Eagles, and I'm sure we will get into that a little bit more when we talk about that. This is the second straight week that the Eagles have not scored any second half points, and I think in the last topic that we have, we can dive into that a little bit more when we compare the Eagles to the rest of the NFC and see how they stack up with other potential powerhouses in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, this whole Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz thing, it's just gone completely full circle. I mean, I was actually going back to some of my old videos that I made, and keep in mind, this was before last season. This was in 2020. I was one of the first people who said that Jalen Hurts could be the one that's going to lead this team for the future. I was saying that even before last season, I was saying that. And then I had people writing in the comments saying, you're saying stuff about Jalen Hurts after he threw one touchdown pass or something. But it wasn't about that. It was about seeing the leadership of Jalen Hurts as a rookie. Just as a rookie coming in and commanding that team, they looked like a completely different team than when Carson Wentz was back there. So Carson Wentz has just never been a guy that, people are going to follow. Some of the people wanted to follow him, but the other half of the people wanted to follow Nick Foles. I don't think we're ever going to have a situation with Jalen Hurts where people are going to say, they're going to be following Minshew. You don't have people in here making a shrine of Gardner Minshew. People know what Jalen Hurts is about. So Jalen Hurts outperforming Carson Wentz that bad is not even surprising to me. And it was an embarrassing performance by Wentz. It was actually one of the worst performances that I've seen him have, because if you watch the game or if you read the stats of the game, you're going to see they threw for 200 yards. And that's a typical game for Wentz. But what you guys don't realize is basically through 3/4 of the game, the guy had passed for 40 yards. At halftime, he had 21 yards passing. It was terrible. They could not move the ball, and every time they would try to run the ball, they would get a couple yards, and then every time they're dropping back, sack, or they're in his face, forcing an incompletion. So this whole Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts thing has gone full circle, and I actually can't believe that there was people out there prior to the season, actually a little bit during the season, that were saying Carson Wentz is better than Jalen Hurts. It's one of the most ridiculous things that I've seen, especially with the way that Jalen Hurts has been playing in these first 3 games.
Yeah, I think it's just them, trying to create the understanding that that Carson is now put in a different situation where, the drama that he went through being a Philadelphia Eagle, whether it was external or internally created, he can hit the reset button on a lot of those things. But at the end of the day, no matter where he goes, he's still the same quarterback. And we watched in Indianapolis that, Frank Reich, who a lot of people thought was, part of the guru, the
Wentz fixer and all the stuff they kept saying.
The Wentz fixer, and it just ended up not working because he doesn't mesh intangibly with
anyone,
with his current tangibles, and he's just not built to be the leader a room needs, that somebody that they can go to war for. And again, you're seeing, and it's like we're watching the same movie, and rewinding it to the very beginning and watching
That's
his
literally what it is.
he's just a broken record to this point. I gotta look at myself in the mirror. I gotta watch the tape. I gotta do better. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And it's a lot of the same things. It doesn't matter what team it is. So again, but this is nothing that we shouldn't. This is nothing we shouldn't be used to by now. But if you look at the game a little more specifically and what the Eagles were able to do from a defensive standpoint, that's what happens when you're able to get home with a 4-man rush and you have a consistency there. And we had a hard time seeing that last year, whether you can chalk it up to the inexperience with Jonathan Gannon as a defensive coordinator, the lack of personnel, going through injuries when Brandon Graham suffered his Achilles. Now that guys have returned and you add ammunition to, your firepower, there's a lot more connection. There's a lot more chemistry going on that the defense is playing better as a unit. So, but again, that's what happens when you're able to get home on a 4-man rush. You don't need to rely on the blitz, and you take an advantage of an offensive line that's just isn't as skilled as your defensive line. Hence, when the dominoes fall and what rolls downhill and your quarterback is playing just as bad, it's a recipe for disaster.
Which, by the way, the 9 sacks on Sunday, that was actually the most sacks that Carson Wentz has ever had in his career. The previous high was 8. So that was actually crazy to watch. And when I saw that we had 4 sacks already in the first quarter, then I knew it was going to be like I didn't know we were going to get like 9 sacks, but I knew it was going to be a long, long day for him. But long story short, the Carson Wentz era, thank God it's over. Thank God it's been over. And thank God that the Jalen Hurts era is beginning. When we get back, guys, we're going to talk about what we've actually been able to see from Jalen Hurts in this first couple of weeks. He's clearly getting better and feeling really confident about himself. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Sports fans are gearing up and saving big at Fanatics.com, the world's largest collection of officially licensed fan gear. From all the leagues, teams, and players you love, unique one-of-a-kind designs exclusively by Fanatics, and autographed collectibles from today's biggest stars shipped directly to your home. Join Fanatics Rewards for free to earn fan cash on every purchase. Shop now and for a limited time, get 20% off all orders. Fanatics.com, officially licensed everything.
Yes, everyone, go check out the links in the description if you're going to order anything from Fanatics. I actually did just order a Jalen Hurts jersey. I got it next to my Cox. Hashtag my Cox Hurts. Also, I had an audible for a max protection thanks to my doctor. He told me that's what I told him my Cox Hurts. He said audible for that max protection. Won't have those problems in the future. But I've completely forgot about the whole sponsorship thing. So next time I order something from Fanatics, I'm actually going to not be an idiot, and I'm going to use my link so we can actually get something out of it. But Jalen Hurts is balling out of his mind. Like, I think that a lot of people saw this coming, but I don't know to this magnitude did they see it coming with the way Jalen has played, because Jalen is just looking like he's looking like a different dude than he was last year. And I know a lot of it has to do with, Smitty has taken a step. Smitty had 156 yards in the first half alone, and he was balling. And A.J. Brown has been balling. A.J. Brown is second or third in the league right now in receiving yards. So he's balling, and him and Jalen, they have that connection. It's special to watch. But you can see that this guy is just he's playing differently than he did last year. He's way more sure of himself. The mechanics, everything looks good. The touch on the deep ball accuracy, everything is right there. And he's just playing quarterback at a high level right now. The defense he's taking what the defense is giving it to him, and he's not forcing anything. He's making some really good decisions, and he's just very comfortable right now. And I think as the season goes on, he's just going to continue to improve. And he's the heart and soul of the team right now, and the team gravitates towards him. And I think when we come to the end of the season, we're going to say Jalen Hurts took the next step as a quarterback. He is a franchise quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 first-round picks in the draft next year. We ain't drafting a QB because Jalen Hurts is the guy that's going to lead this team.
Right. I mean, it's so long as Jalen Hurts is able to control that going forward, and I feel that this is a great definition in tying to what dedication to your craft yields you as a result. Because we heard the rumblings in the offseason that how seriously Jalen Hurts is taking this as far as developing his talents as a quarterback and what he needs to do to improve. And you hear him working with one of the gurus in Tom House, and the communications with Tom Brady, doing this, that, and the third, changing his diet around, getting in the weight room and bulking up, and not skipping leg day, or because we've seen in the Vikings game how he is able to carry defenders with him to the end zone, and it's just the strength he has pound for pound is unbelievable. And I don't think we have seen the ceiling for Jalen Hurts quite yet. Again, he has addressed it, and at the end of every victory speech, at the end of games, he does not think that the team has played to their full potential yet. And I think he's right, especially when you consider that the Eagles, again, they have not scored second half points at all through their last 2 games to when they had at least 14 against the Detroit Lions. Now, in that game, they had 31 offensive points, including the pick 6 that gave them to 38. And you look at the Vikings and the Commanders game, and they have 24 total points with nothing to show for it in the second half. Is that a means of downplaying your opponent, that you don't have to get aggressive for your play calling anymore? Is it just the amount of faith that you have in your defense to be able to control and manage the lead that your offense doesn't need to carry anymore? I mean, you can create many narratives for this right now, but what is definitively true is the progress of Jalen Hurts, and you see it in sports media everywhere. Him being one of the top guys in MVP candidacy, up with the Tuas and the Lamar Jacksons of the world. And speaking of guys like Tua and Lamar, let's not forget Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Tua, including potentially Jalen Hurts, are all going to be looking for a contract. So, as we know,
and all those guys you just mentioned came from the same draft class, by the way.
There you go. And that's a funny tie-in because, as we know, Howie Roseman is known to stay ahead of the curve pretty consistently. So I think it's a matter of time as to how long the Eagles decide to wait to potentially give Hurts an extension. His play is showing it so far, certainly. Through 3 games, we're looking at a 67% completion percentage for Jalen Hurts. All of last year, he was in the mid to high 50s. That's quite a jump. 916 yards, 7 total touchdowns, only 1 interception. And the interception part and the fumbling part, per se, I think is one thing.
That interception he has was a pass that came off of Kenneth Gainwell's hands.
Yeah. He just didn't catch it.
Jalen has not really made that many bad throws, I would say.
Right. But nonetheless, I think that's one thing, that a lot of people seem to not pay attention to. When we go from Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts and how substantially different the two are, to which Jalen is very careful with how he processes and how he protects the football from either coughing it up or throwing it into harm's way. He's a lot better. He's a lot better at that. He's not afraid to throw it out of bounds. He's not afraid to go down with it if he needs to take a sack. That's just that kind of conservativeness and living for the next down is, very important when you want to be a commander of your offense. And if you're just going to go out there and right, but if you're gonna go out there and just be careless on a game-to-game basis, it's going to be harder to fight for that kind of person if, like I said, if they're just careless with the football. But if we also look at a couple more statistics here, yards per game, he's over 300. I don't think we've seen that coming either. He's at 305 through 3 weeks. His QBR is 75 on a scale of 0 to 100, which is phenomenal for a quarterback that can't throw the football. No, I don't believe he's first. I don't believe he's first in the league. I'd have to check on that again. But
so first Lamar. I'll check on that.
It could. I mean, but even still, when we're talking about Hurts statistically around guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, outside of getting blown out by the Jaguars, he was coming into the league, coming into the season on fire. Trevor Lawrence is looking pretty good. Speaking of Jacksonville, Joe Burrow, maybe despite the game against the Cowboys, we didn't see a lot of.
Sorry to cut you off. Jalen, he's fifth. He's behind Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, and Tua.
Patrick Mahomes. I mean, top 5 in QBR is that's a ridiculous jump so far. But again, it's about how he can keep it up. We're only talking about 3 weeks here, and we're heading into an interesting week 4 matchup with our previous head coach and a team that Doug Peterson has turned around pretty quickly. But nonetheless, and I had another point, and I completely forgot where I was going with it. But yeah, nonetheless, Hurts is off. He's off to a fantastic start.
If things end up the way that they are, I think he's on pace for to pass for 4,800 yards.
Yep.
For the season. And people were saying before the season, can he even pass for 4,000 yards? I think the answer to that question is obvious, and I also think it's obvious that you see the way quarterbacks are being paid, and Lamar Jackson, he turned down $250 million from the Baltimore Ravens. So he turned that down. I mean, it's just crazy seeing where the quarterback pay is going. So we're going to have to pay Jalen. If Jalen has an MVP season, we're going to have to pay the man a lot of money. And you know what? I hope we do. Because he's had to overcome a lot of crap. And this guy, he's just such an easy guy to root for. You were mentioning earlier how he says he doesn't think the offense has hit the standard. Even the team's 3-0. I mean, if you watch any press conferences and you listen to this man speak, he's like, you would have thought the team lost the way that he's speaking. Like, it's so crazy that he carries himself like a grown man. I know he's technically a grown man, but I mean,
only 24,
23, 24-year-olds, they don't do stuff like this. They don't get into this mindset until they're close to their 30s. But he's acting like a seasoned veteran, and he's a great leader. And this is the exact type of guy in a place like Philadelphia. Like, you can't always play in Philadelphia. Not every player can play in Philadelphia is what I mean. Everyone, likes the idea of it, but if you don't have a strong mindset, if you don't have a strong mentality, if you're not willing to put everything on the line, if you're not willing to go out there and hold yourself accountable and hold everyone around you accountable and be a great leader, a great player, then this ain't the place for you, bro. That's what it was with Wentz. Wentz, he had a good arm. He had, the measurables. He had everything, but he didn't have the heart, and he didn't have the mentality, and he didn't have the ability to lead a team. So that's the difference between the two of them. And now you're seeing that Jalen Hurts is like, if there was ever a player that's meant for Philly, it's Jalen Hurts.
I think it's the continued strive to want more and think that he hasn't done enough. I mean, we've seen this on a weekly basis already, and it's only been 3
100%.
games. He hasn't been fully satisfied. The Lions win, he knew they could play better. The Vikings win, again, he knew they could play better. Commanders come around, they get slaughtered, and he still thought that the job wasn't completely done to their standard. It's that type of mentality that it's easy to go to war with somebody because they always strive for a level greater than what they're currently at, and it's very important. And stemming from last year, I sincerely thought in the back of my mind that it was foolish to write this kid off. Mainly because he comes into 2020, he plays 4.5 games for an offense that to that point we didn't know if it was going to be the same or not, and it turned out that it wasn't. So he comes in with a brand new coaching staff, and he comes in with a few new players. So the offensive structure, the terminology, and a lot of those other nuances are going to be brand new to him. And after the end of last season, for people writing him off and thinking that he wasn't going to be successful in the NFL, this is a prime example so far of why you need to pump the brakes and let someone get used to a system and have more than 1 year under their belt. So now, because he's running the same system for the second year in a row, he's in the right place at the right time, on the right page at the right time with his receivers. Their timing is a lot better. They can run more plays in structure because he knows where everyone is supposed to be at this point in time on a certain play call. Sirianni giving some of those duties to Shane Steichen. And that's something else that I mentioned in a previous video that I dropped on my channel, is that this is one thing we weren't used to seeing when Carson Wentz was our quarterback, because there always seemed to be this internal or external struggle, whether we noticed it or not, to where Carson would want everything to be his way and his way only, or they weren't going to be successful. That's another difference between him and Jalen Hurts, is that Jalen has complete trust in the game plan that his coaches create for him to run and execute at the highest level. That's one thing Carson wasn't capable of doing. And then when you see that ever so building and developing cohesion that Jalen has, not only with his playmakers, but the coaching staff, that belief and that faith level continues to elevate. So, now that we feel they're playing at the top of their game, he still thinks that they haven't reached it yet. And, it's example after example on, a night and day difference.
It's going to be scary to see.
Like him. Yes.
It's going to be so scary to see what happens when, like, the offense is clicking on all cylinders, because you feel like they're clicking. They're clicking pretty well, but if they play like a complete game, then what does that mean? If Jalen's averaging 300 yards a game, then what does that mean through the air? What does that mean? He's gonna be throwing for 400 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns. Like, what's he gonna be doing? Like, what is this offense gonna be doing if it's not clicking 100% on cylinders? If they reach the point where they do, that's going to be crazy to watch. But Jalen Hurts getting better is something that a lot of us saw coming. A lot of people were doubting him, and it's satisfying to see all these people getting proven wrong so far. But other than Jalen Hurts, is another guy that looks like he's getting better, and as Darius Slay, or as he likes to be called, Slay, has nicknamed the receivers the Batmans. You got skinny Batman, Devonte Smith, 169 yards and a touchdown against Washington. And I got to give a major shout out to Devonte Smith for this week, because Devonte Smith, he caught that pass in the middle of the field, and he basically got like slammed on the ground. He got the wind knocked out of him. He actually had to come out of the game for a minute on 4th down. He goes up and gets the ball. For a guy that's the size of Devonte Smith, this dude is balling out and getting contested catches. And that was actually one of the things that he was trying to work on in the offseason. His ability to be good at getting contested catches and tight windows. This dude just straight up goes up and attacks the ball. He's stronger than he looks. This dude is like, he's just really strong. I'm telling you, like, this guy is also taking another step and getting better and growing in front of our eyes. And you got to look at his receiving core. You got Skinny Batman, you got Smitty, you got Swole Batman, that's AJ, and you got Fast Batman, that's Quez. Quez is 23. I think Smitty's 23 and AJ's 24. So these guys are going to be playing together for a long time. So we went from the Eagles being a team that we can't draft a receiver, we can't get a receiver to save our lives. We have a major wide receiver problem. What are we going to do to fix it? To we got this receiver position good, and we got it really good for years and years to come. So that's outstanding. Devonte Smith, you got to get at least part of the game ball. The other part of the game ball goes to the defense. But Devonte Smith came to play against the Washington Commanders. Outstanding performance by him.
I think one of the I think another key factor that you have to include into this is that we did not see a lot of these. We did not see a lot of these plays last year, and a lot of that has to do with, the quarterback not being afraid to take those chances anymore.
That's true, Grizz.
In the case of Hurts, and you watched that Washington game, and he didn't have very many incompletions, if any at all, where you were scratching your head like, Jalen, why did you throw that? If it was something that wasn't catchable, like I said, he's not a quarterback that's been putting the ball in harm's way, which is very important to reduce turnovers, as he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL and not producing turnovers. What Jalen is also doing to the benefit of his receivers is he's giving his playmakers a chance to make a play on the football, and that's huge. 50-50 balls that that your guys have the vertical for to take advantage over lesser corners. AJ Brown can get physical and run through somebody. Devonte Smith, plenty of examples. Mossing dudes in the Washington game, getting them over the top. Kendall Fuller was abused. He was abused that game. He could not cover Smitty. St. Just could not cover him. Yeah, and it's funny because St. Just was it was the one pass that was incomplete or was a breakup or something, and he's celebrating like he did something when it could have actually been flagged for pass interference because his hands were early, but that's not the here nor there. But I think we understood the magnitude of playmakers that we had since last year, and we only added to it with the addition of AJ Brown. But the difference now is that the Eagles have what I can call like a holy trinity, so to speak, at the receiver position, to where you have your physical guy in AJ Brown that is excellent with yards after catch because he is hard to bring down as a tackler. You have your deep threat in Quez Watkins, who can take the top off of a defense, and as a defense, you have to respect that. And then Devonte Smith, you have your route running technician that can do, that you can line him up pretty much anywhere, and he's almost a jack of all trades, and he's continuing to show that he has that potential to do it, where he can shrug off a fall like he did in the on that deep ball by Hurts, where he threw it on a rope only where Smith could get it. Smitty, Moss, and two guys in double coverage. I think that's an element that we need to consider here, is that the Eagles, because Jalen Hurts is a lot more comfortable in the offense and we can utilize these playmakers to the full potential of the game plan, it's him being comfortable now to take those shots downfield and be aggressive where teams last year weren't expecting this, and it's catching them off guard.
Absolutely, bro. And like I said, Skinny Batman out here turning it up another notch from last year. And he had a really good rookie season, broke Deshaun Jackson's franchise record and everything. And we saw like how much potential that this guy had. I think people knew that we weren't really getting him the ball as much as we should have been getting him the ball. I mean, last season what we were seeing is with Rager still being here, now he's in Minnesota, they were still using a bunch of plays and they were doing like end arounds and this play and that play and they were trying to get Rager the ball so they can make Rager have higher confidence. Now you don't have a guy over here that's a crybaby that you have to like babysit him and give him his confidence up and all this stuff. You can just go out and play ball. And that's the best part about it. So that's why Devonte is going to be continuing to benefit from that. We've come a long way since week one. Because I remember what people were saying after week one. Oh, this isn't going to work. Like, you got Devonte having 0 yards. He's going to get upset. No, he's not going to get upset. None of these guys are like that have diva mentalities. Like 1 week, AJ's going to do what he did like against Detroit. And then 1 week, Smitty's going to be the hero. 1 week, Quez is going to be the hero. And they're just going to keep doing it, and we keep winning, and everyone's happy. So I love this receiver core, and I love the fact that these guys are so young, and they're going to be playing with each other for like the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, you just talked about it. We've already had a perfect example of that for the first 3 weeks.
He did not get his revenge.
Week one was the AJ Brown game where the Eagles went out and flexed their new toy. Detroit had no answer for him. You get into week 2, all of your best playmakers, you're getting them involved. They're doing a little bit of everything. Dallas Goedert, as dominant as he's been for what we know. AJ Brown was still involved. Devonte Smith was still involved. Then Quez Watkins, we feature that speed again. He just blows past, takes the top off of the Vikings defense. Now, granted, there was a terrible breakdown in the secondary for the Vikings, but nonetheless, when you can hit speeds of over 20 miles an hour, there's not very many DBs that are going to keep up with you when you're going that fast. And I mean, Tyreek Hill.
I agree.
I mean, there you go. Look, there's not very many can keep up with Tyreek Hill. I mean, granted, not saying that Quez is off that speed because it's hard to replicate. But again, this is a product of having 3 receivers and also a tight end that the defense has to take respect for more than just one player. The Eagles have had a hard time trying to compile that for a while now. But now you can have so much scheme versatility in being able to exploit those breakdowns in defensive coverages. And, the Eagles are set up perfectly with it, but it's all up to the coaches and it's all up to the quarterback to take advantage on a weekly basis.
Absolutely, man. Receiving core looking really good, guys. But we got to get to some other stuff. Obviously, last week we were playing Carson Wentz, and we know Carson was here for, 5 years. And then Doug was also here for 5 years. Doug Peterson, a.k.a. Dougie Fresh, making his return to Philly on Sunday as the Jaguars, who are actually leading the AFC South. They had that 24-0 shutout against the Indianapolis Colts.
Yep.
And then last week, probably their most impressive performance today was against the LA Chargers, 38-10, 28-point victory for them on the road. The Jaguars are not looking like the Jaguars of old. They're not looking like the Jaguars of the past. Trevor Lawrence is looking a lot. I mean, we talk about how comfortable Jalen is looking, but Trevor is looking very, very comfortable as well over there. And I think a lot of that has to do with the job Doug has been able to do for them. You got to give Doug some credit, because one thing about Doug is he understands quarterbacks very, very well. He's a great quarterbacks coach. He's always been a good quarterbacks coach. When he was under Andy Reid for a very long time, and obviously when he came to be the head coach of the Eagles, he was a very good quarterback coach, and he's good at developing guys and coaching guys up in that regard. And obviously a great players coach that not the greatest X's and O's guy, but he's definitely a guy that people get behind. And I see you're seeing that kind of response from this Jacksonville team in that regard. So I'm happy for Doug. I'm glad Doug's doing great things. And I think obviously him helping us win the Super Bowl, I think that the fans will definitely have a warm reception for him at the Linc, unlike what they will for Wentz when we
Absolutely
in for the second time. There will definitely be some cheers for Dougie Fresh over there. But all that aside, I think when you look at this game, you gotta slow down James Robinson, because I think that establishing that run game, that's something that makes the job a lot easier for Trevor Lawrence. So if we can make Trevor Lawrence beat us by, Trevor going out there and he just throws for 400 yards and he throws for 4 touchdowns and we just get cooked, then okay, whatever. But I think what we got to do is we got to stop their run game. James Robinson, they ran for 150 yards against the Chargers, by the way. James Robinson had 17 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown, and then Etienne had 45 yards on the ground as well. Etienne's got a lot of speed, so that's actually a really good dynamic 1-2 punch that they got going on in the backfield over there. I think that if we can neutralize their run game and have to make them one-dimensional and make them, pass the ball more, then I think that that's what the defense wants to do to get them in a good situation. Because keep in mind, man, we got a really good pass rush over here that can do some good stuff. We saw him get the 9 sacks last week. We want to continue that momentum. I think that shutting down the Jags' run game is going to be a very big key to the game. But I'm not sleeping on Jacksonville now. I think that this is a trap game for us. So I think that we got to come out and play our game and play the way we've been playing and clean a couple things up, especially like scoring points in the second half. I think is something we're going to have to do. But other than that, I think we should be able to handle business as long as we, don't come out sluggish and, thinking that the Jaguars are going to be, an easy pushover. Like the Jaguars in the past have been. Like everyone sees Jaguars on the schedule and they're like, oh, that's a win. This could be a tough game. This could be a tough test for us. And I actually wouldn't put it past the Jaguars to win the AFC South division this year.
Yeah. crazy to say that after what Jacksonville has gone through in recent years. And
the AFC South is just really bad. That's part of the reason. But I'm also impressed with what Jacksonville's done. It's a little bit of both.
I feel it just ultimately boils down to, this franchise.
He's not going to get booed.
The franchise, and especially the players that they now finally have a sense of stability when it comes to a competent leader in terms of a head coach and what they had to go through with the Urban Meyer experiment, and now they bring in a Super Bowl winning head coach in Doug Peterson, who. Yeah, things got rocky at the end in Philadelphia, but he still has nothing but love for the city that he contributed how much of his services to in coaching here twice, and one of those resulting in Lombardi Trophy, and I watched a little bit of the interview with John Clark and talking about that he hopes that the statue hasn't been taken down yet, and I don't think that's ever going to.
No, that statue's never coming down.
No, nobody is ever going to forget that magical season and what Doug Peterson was able to do, and then taking Nick Foles and as a backup, and then us getting revenge on the New England Patriots. It was unbelievable. That's never going to, that's never going away.
41-33, baby.
But for the Jaguars now, it's funny how history repeats itself. And let me explain. You look at the Jags, who have a 1-2 punch in terms of the run game. And you just talked about Etienne and James Robinson. The two of them are averaging over 4 yards a carry. James on 17 attempts to Travis's 8.7. You got a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence who has a pretty good arm, I think is fair to say. He's not afraid of.
Got a really good arm.
He's not afraid of slinging the ball downfield. He is athletic in escaping the pocket and using his legs. A lot of stuff sounds familiar right now. And the result of that is Trevor, through 3 games, having a completion percentage of almost 70%. He has a QBR of 71. His average yards per attempt is 7, which you'll take that. 6 touchdowns to 1 interception. All of this at the ripe age of 23. And I think this is solely a product of having the right leader in commanding the troops. And, I think that's the Doug Peterson effect, and rightfully so. And we look at them from a statistic standpoint, and it's going to get a little more impressive through 3 games. The Jaguars are the 4th ranked defense in points allowed. They are 7th in yards. They are number one in turnovers. And then you look at the rushing defense. They're number 1 across the board in attempts, yardage, and rushing touchdowns allowed. They're 4th in yards per carry with 3.1. So, I mean, there's plenty of proof here, just how much night and day it is when all you do for the most part is make a coaching change and then take gambles and take chances on players that their previous teams just gave up on or didn't want them anymore. Everyone criticized the Christian Kirk, signing that contract, and everyone thought it was an overpay. He seems to be working so far 3 weeks in. And granted, they just traded away Laviska Shenault, and he ends up making a big play against the Carolina Panthers against the Saints. But it doesn't look like that they need him anymore because they're already better structured. Because
shout out to the Panthers for trying to help out the Eagles get that top pick from the Saints.
Right, but a lot of this just stems from the kind of change, the kind of positive change you make.
Yeah, Doug's definitely
having a head coach
around. Urban Meyer thing, that was just an absolute disaster. I feel bad for Trevor because Trevor has so much potential to be a great young quarterback, and he was just thrown into that terrible situation. And some of the things Urban Meyer was doing was just you don't do that when you're a head coach in the National Football League. Even the really bad head coaches are not doing stuff and being unprofessional at the level that he was. So tough for Trevor, but I think Doug being there is it's been great for him.
They're a lot better off. Jags fans should be blessed to have Dougie P, and it's good to see them taking to him and taking care of him pretty darn well to start the year off, because they've had some quality wins. They sure have.
Definitely. We got about 10 minutes left here in the show before we hit that 1 hour mark. So we're going to wrap up the show with the biggest question that you guys have been hearing on, social media, TV, whatever, people, sports talk shows talking about the best teams in the league and best teams in the NFC right now. If you look around in the NFC, how many teams are better right now than the Philadelphia Eagles? Tampa Bay, Green Bay. Who are you going to throw in there and say the Rams? I don't know. With the way that I've seen some of these teams play, I can't really say that I think any of these teams are better than the Eagles. And once the Eagles start to hit on all cylinders on both sides of the ball, I really don't think it's even going to be close. And I know it's early in the season to be saying stuff like this, but, Green Bay, I like Green Bay. I think their defense is great, and I'm also not going to bet against Aaron Rodgers, even though a lot of people are, and saying that he's not going to do anything without Devonte Adams. Well, he is going to do stuff without Devonte Adams because he actually won 4 league MVPs. He won 2 without Adams. He won 2 with him. But he's going to be a threat. They're going to be a threat for sure. I don't know about Tampa. Like I'm a little bit concerned with what I've seen from Tom Brady in this offense. They are not able to put up like the high points on the board. And Mike Evans was suspended last week and everything. And the big fight that happened against the Saints, Marshawn Lattimore. Listen, like I'm just not feeling Tampa as much of a big scary threat as they were. And I wonder if time is actually going to catch up to Tom this year. And when I look around the other teams in NFC, the Rams, I don't know. Stafford has come back down to earth. These other teams are not really showing me enough to say, yes, we got to watch out for them. That's the top team in the NFC. I think the way the Eagles are playing right now, they're playing some great complementary football. I think once they tighten up a few things, they're really going to be playing at an even higher level. So I got no problem with people saying that the Eagles are the best team in the NFC. Until further notice, until someone shows otherwise, yes, the Philadelphia Eagles are the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that there's plenty of teams that are 2-1 in the in the NFC right now, but there's not a whole lot that you're exactly sold on. And you mentioned
there's none that I'm sold on except for Green Bay. Green Bay and Philly. Yeah. Those are my top two teams.
Right. So, I mean, you mentioned the Rams, you mentioned the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are going through a slew of injuries right now. And Tom Brady does not have, his top playmakers, with Mike Evans serving a suspension. Chris Godwin's not healthy enough to return yet. He poached Cole Beasley off of the street, who was sitting on his couch, and tried to insert him into the game. And didn't.
Tom Brady always got to have white wide receiver to throw the ball to.
Man, and Scotty Miller is not, Scotty Miller is only really known as a deep threat, and he's got that going against him right now offensively. But you can't say the same thing for the Bucs defense, as they've been as good as ever as they have for the last 2 years. That's one thing that's stayed constant. Even if they lost a few players, and I think JPP and Jason Pierre-Paul ended up going to the Baltimore Ravens after Tampa not picking him back up. You look at the Vikings, who are 2-1, even though we had beaten them 24-7. They picked it back up against the Detroit Lions. The Lions are developing a merit for themselves, and with them staying competitive and losing close games, it looks like the theme of last year is still rearing its ugly head a little bit. But I think when when you're a team that's number one in rushing, when you have DeAndre Swift, there's not much to worry about, although I think they're going to be missing him for at least 2 weeks. But nonetheless, when you look at teams like that, here's the case that I can make for the Eagles as, as one of, if not the best team right now in the NFC. You have a team offensively that is fifth in points. They're number one in total yards. They're first in turnovers. Your quarterback's taking care of the football. There's people not fumbling left and right. Your team is first in yards per attempt. Again, Jalen Hurts being a lot more comfortable, and getting aggressive and taking those shots deep downfield, letting your playmakers make plays when it matters most. Despite the team being 17th in the league in yards per carry, they're still 7th in rushing, while leading the league in rushing touchdowns. And that includes Jalen Hurts when he elects to run the football. And all of this, here's the kicker. All of this is while the Eagles are 28th in starting field position. That's how efficient they are. They're 28th in starting field position, and yet they're still able to put the numbers up that they are. Okay, defensively, they're 7th in points allowed. They're 7th in turnovers. They're first in yards per attempt allowed. Against, defensively, that's what they're giving up. So as much as we're making this about, as much as we're making this an offensive based show, And as much as some of us did not see this coming from Jalen Hurts, is Jonathan Gannon starting to turn over a new leaf with how his defense is playing? I think that's a legitimate question that we can ask ourselves. Now, here's some context clues though. Through the first 3 weeks, defensive rankings in points allowed, to our opponents, obviously the Lions, the Vikings, and the Commanders. The Lions are dead last in points allowed. They are the worst. So they're giving up the most points. Is that saying much? I don't know. Doesn't sound like it. They're second, although. So the Lions right now are an oxymoron. They're second in the league in points scored, but defensively they're dead last in points allowed. So take of that what you will. The Minnesota Vikings are 9th in points allowed. So the Eagles statistically have already faced the top 10 defense and almost shut them out and only gave up 7 points. Washington, okay, they're top 15 offensively, being 12th in points scored, but defensively they're 28th in points allowed. So you can take of that what you will in terms of the competition that the Eagles have faced. But again, this is something that's only been going on for 3 weeks. Teams are going to get better over time. But when you yes, absolutely. But when you add it all together through a consistency standpoint, the Eagles are one of the most consistent teams of football, and them maintaining that kind of efficiency with the way that they were able to from a statistical standpoint, it shows that they have a legitimate argument for being one of, if not the best in the National Football Conference.
Absolutely. So we'll have to see how stuff plays out for the rest of the season. I definitely think that the Eagles are right there, if not the best team in the NFC right now. I like Green Bay. Like I said, I like the way their defense is playing. I'm not betting against Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure the Rams will get better. I'm sure Tampa will get better. I'm sure there'll be some other teams that you got to watch out for. But when it's all said and done, I like the way I like our chances to be very, very dangerous in the NFC. And I don't think that's something that anyone saw coming. If you would have said before the season, can the Eagles be the top team in the NFC?
Right.
A lot of people would have said, now hold on a second. But now, after seeing what these guys can do, I don't think it's that crazy. But that is actually going to wrap us up for the night, guys. So, Lindy, real quick, if you want to just let the people know any of the stuff that you have been doing, that would be awesome. So, floor is yours, bro.
No, as of lately, and as you know, between the two of us, we had a minor hiatus for different reasons. But getting back onto the channel, we got a brand new logo. We got a brand new intro. We got a brand new outro. It feels a lot better that way. We got some different formats going on for our pregame videos, our postgame videos. We got some stat lines.
Appreciate you, Grizz.
Going through that explanation, this, that, and the third, and just taking those little steps into giving an overall improvement in terms of entertainment to the crowd. So if you haven't yet, be sure to check me out, as well as my partner over here, Philly Jim. Two guys doing a podcast together, and we're just trying to grow our channels respectively as well.
For sure. Everyone go smash that subscribe button. And remember, kids, my cox hurts. Went to the doctor to check it out. He told me to audible for that max protection. Appreciate you, Joey. Appreciate you, everyone that was tuning in. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys. And we will see you on the next show.